We're going to go ahead and take a look at Chapter 5, Section 1. We're going to start out with the fundamental counting principle. Basically, it says if you have a couple of things that happen or can happen, and the first one can occur in, say, m ways, and the second one can occur in n ways, to figure out the total number of ways that they can occur, all you do is just multiply the number of ways of the one times the number of ways of the other. And so that allows you to be able to easily figure out the total number of ways something could happen without having to list out all the different possibilities. Now, as we look down below here, we have a family going to or on a trip. They have a couple places they could go, and so I'm going to look at places and put down a spot for that. And then we have really three ways for them to be able to get there, and that's transportation. So we have three ways for them to get there. We have two places to go. So that really gives us a total of, when we multiply across, six different ways they can get there with where they're going. Because you could be going to the beach by car, beach by plane, beach by train, or you could go to the mountains by car, mountains by plane, or mountains by train. So that's what we mean by the fundamental counting principle. So as we look at the next part here, independent versus dependent. Independent events mean what happens to begin with has no effect on what happens next. Where dependent events, what happens the first time affects what's going to happen next. And so if something is going on and it affects what's going to happen next, that's dependent, because what happens second depends upon what happened the first time. Independent events, what happens second has not affected at all by the first thing. So as we look here, we are looking at choosing a color and a pair of shoe or a size for a pair of shoes. Now your color, does that affect the size of your shoe? No. So these are independent events because one does not affect the other. Now, when we're looking at the next one, we are selecting a first, second, and third place winner in an art contest. So when you affect your first winner, that does affect your second place winner, because to begin with, you had 15 choices. But when you come back to try to figure out how many second place winners you have, well, you don't have the same number of choices. You only have 14 left. So here, what happens second is affected by what happens first. So this is a dependent situation. So you want to go ahead and decide if these are independent or dependent, and then figure out the options. So here to begin with, we have two types of cones, and we have 15 ice cream choice or kinds of ice cream. So we have two types of cones, and we have 15 flavors. Now, if you select a certain type of cone, does that affect how many flavors you have? No, it doesn't. So that means these two things are independent of each other. So to figure out the number of ways, then all we have to do is go ahead and multiply how many types of cones we have, which is 2, by the number of flavors, which is 15, and we multiply across and we get 30 different options. So down below on number 12, we're doing homework here. We have math, chemistry, and English. So here, if you do, say, math first, it does affect options for what you do second. Because when you look at what to do first, you have three choices. But once already you've done your one subject and studied that, you only have two choices next. So that means this is dependent. What you do to begin with does affect what you can do second. So we'll look. We have three different situations. How many choices do you have for your first subject? Well, you have three. Now, one subject's already been chose. When you come across to do your second choice, there's only two subjects to choose from. And then when you do your third choice, there's only one. So when you multiply these choices together, you get a total of 6 options. So when we look here, the key word is repeats. So here we have a 4-digit code. The number of digits we have are 1 through 9 plus 0, so that means we have 10 choices for your first one. But because we can repeat, the number of choices for your second option is still 10. And because you can repeat, it's still 10 and still 10. And so when you multiply across, you get 10,000. So what's it going on to begin with has no effect on the second, so these are independent. Now, when we're looking at the next option, it says no repeats are allowed. So you'd still have 10 choices to begin with, but one option's been used, can't be used over here, so then there's only 9 left. 2 have been used so far, so then there's only 8 left, and so on. So then when you multiply, you get this. So your options for your second choice is affected by what you have to begin with, so this is referred to as a dependent situation. So that gives you an overview of what's going on here.